Welcome to this conference on the critical tasks of the university today. A project and a conference co-organized by the International Consortiums of Critical Theory Programs at Berkeley, the chair on the academic and the Civic at Utrecht University, and the Academy of Global Humanities and Critical Theory. Before opening our panel, let me introduce you Vice Rector for Research at the University of Bologna, Professor Antonino Rotolo, for a welcome, and then we will continue with opening remarks by the two conveners of the conference, Rosi Braidotti and Judith Butler, and then we will open our first panel with our first two speakers. So thanks, Vice Rector, for being here today, and thanks everybody for attending the conference.
Welcome all of you. From the rector, on behalf of the rector, who is in Korea now. So welcome to the University of Bologna. It's a great place. So thank you to Raffaele and to the organizers, to the Consortium Critical Theory Program, the chair on the academic and the Civic in Utrecht, and also the Academy of Global Humanities and Critical Theory. Thank you all to be here. I'm a philosopher. So since I'm a philosopher, the topic you are discussing today has a double value for me. From a philosophical point of view, and from the perspective of a Vice Rector for Research. Because as a Vice Rector for Research, I every single day deal with metrics and value metrics. So that's my point, right? And the reason is obvious, because research needs resources. And that's a striking issue, right? Especially in Europe, where we have, for example, an infrastructure divide among different countries, and this results in different opportunities for research and knowledge of different countries in contributing to the excellence of research. And then the question is, what we can do then? So, an interesting starting point for me is Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics, who said, all agree that what is just in distributions ought to accord with a certain merit. Nevertheless, all do not mean the same thing by merit. So, the problem is this, the perspective of those who are handling, for example, the governance of universities or research is distribution of resources, but the point, and according to merit. But the point is, what do we mean by merit? It all mean different things by merit. So the question is that value metrics are clearly not objective, but they objectively express a political choice, right? And so far, for example, research in social science and humanities had little room in this game, right? And so far, and nowadays, in Brussels, for example, people are starting discussing what do we mean by research impact, social impact of knowledge and research. It is quite clear that the current metrics and the current ways for evaluating impact are not sufficient. And since all mean different things by merit, it means that critical thinking is important, because different views should be combined in order to build a new way of making for evaluating research. If a research evaluation is needed, at least from my perspective, the point is how to do that. So I think the critical thinking is a very interesting way to challenge current ways of evaluating research and improve things and possibly offer a new alternative for the evaluation of research. My starting point in Aristotle. This is my starting point. You are probably the ending point. So probably you, even though I think that ending point doesn't work with the critical thinking, because critical thinking is always open, right? So, but anyway, the topic you are discussing for me is very interesting. So I'm very happy that you are here in Bologna and discuss together these issues. So thank you very much. Have a nice and exciting conference. Thank you.
I'm enormously pleased to be here. and to see so many colleagues and friends from different parts of the world, and to meet people in Bologna for the first time. I wanted to also thank Raffaele Laudani for helping to organize this, Rosi Braidotti for co-directing this with me, and Antonio Schiavoli and Michela Filippini for the enormous amount of work that they have put into this event. I'd also like to thank Ramsey McGlazer, who is here from Berkeley, and Catherine Wallerstein, both of whom have worked with Brianna George to make this happen from afar. I thought I would simply take this opportunity to explain something about the International Consortium of Critical Theory Programs. It is a consortium that is funded by the Mellon Foundation, and it currently has several dimensions. The first one is a directory online, which includes about 400 programs, centers, and projects that span several continents, and it is currently accepting new entries to its multilingual online directory every week. The task of that directory is to help people who have never been connected with one another to become more connected and to find across languages and continents people who are working in the same field or with the same problematic in mind. We also have 7 conferences. This is the first, and they are concerned with the following themes: the critical tasks of the university, populism, authoritarianism, and democracy, the critique of violence now, and critical memory. All of these conferences seek to link scholarly and activist traditions across the global South and East, the peripheries of Europe, and the Middle East. And we have also funded efforts to revise and expand a critical theory archive at the University of California at Irvine to include and connect to various archives around the world. We're also sponsoring a new journal edited by Juan Obarrio called Critical Times. Juan is here today. And a new book series with Polity Press called Critical South, directed by Laetitia Sabsai and Pramesh Lalu. In establishing this colloquium, we convened 3 meetings to find out what scholars and activists would like from such a project. They were in Buenos Aires, in Cape Town, and in Athens, kind of Istanbul in exile in Athens. And of course, one of the first skepticisms I encountered was, well, critical theory, does that mean the Frankfurt School? Does it have a meaning that exceeds the Frankfurt School? And some were worried that the term critical theory was too bound up with its European legacy. Could we still work with it? Were the questions that the Frankfurt School were asking, are they the same questions that we pose now? Well, my conclusion after many conversations is that we have to let critical theory leave Frankfurt, or rather, let Frankfurt become resituated within a global framework. We could have sought simply to give a forum for critical theory from the South, accepting that the South is a unity of some kind with a distinct epistemological standpoint or perspective, more or less purified of extra-hemispheric contaminations. But there were too many important quarrels about the geopolitical and geographical presumptions made by such theories, whether they apply rightly or evenly across South America, whether they apply to Africa, to the legacy of apartheid in South Africa, to South Asia, to East Asia, to the geopolitical tensions between the South and North of South America or Africa. In any case, some people said, what about the South? Is it not creeping north? Does it not include Greece? Maybe potentially it will include Italy as well. In any case, all of these important questions have concerned us during this time. One aspect, though, of the Frankfurt School that seemed especially important was that they sought to identify forms of domination and exploitation and violence that were current in their times, and to try to understand what kind of interdisciplinary thought was necessary, not only to register those phenomena, to reflect upon them, but also to provide a transformative or emancipatory framework that would lead us beyond those forms of domination and injustice. So we have, in some ways, continued that tradition by insisting that whatever critical theory might be, it must be interdisciplinary, that it must respond to the historically urgent questions of its time, and the response has to be global and multilingual in character. Today, we are beginning a reflection on the critical tasks of the university. One question is, where is critical theory within the university? Another question is, what is critical, in the sense of reflective, in the sense of urgent, about universities now? Are universities imperiled by standards that suppress or marginalize critical thought? And if critical theory takes place in the university, what is the critical way that the university faces its public or its many publics? How do we do work that not only takes place in the university, but engages in the world that makes its demand on our thinking? And to talk a little bit more about the critical tasks of the university, I invite my dear friend and indispensable colleague, Rosi Braidotti, to come speak to us.
Dear colleagues of Bologna University, dear Professor Butler and colleagues from the Mellon Foundation, it's an enormous honor and a great pleasure to be here to partake in the launching of this amazing, ambitious, necessary, timely project. And what a better place to do such a launch than in the alma mater studiorum that is Bologna University, allegedly the oldest on our continent, certainly the best by most standards, and part of a tradition which in the situated knowledge is politics of location, which is my way of practicing critical theory, is so specific of Europe and so very important to Italy. The tradition of universities bound to their cities, the civic function of the critical space that is the university. If I were to place the global ambition of mapping critical theory anywhere, it would be the city, the civic space and its medieval inception as we can get in these ancient, tired out places that we're in Europe, or in the massive smart new cities that are coming across the world. What is the connection between academic and critical civic responsibility in the third millennium? In our continent, the university as the location of academic and scientific excellence cannot be extracted from the political context of this ever-expanding planetary phenomenon, which is the contemporary cities. Whether you look at Coimbra, at Helsinki, at Edinburgh, or Athens, European cities and their universities grew together and had all the growing pains and the conflict and contradiction of a never-ending, growing, intricate, intimate relationship. How does that shift in the third millennium? What does it mean that a place like Bologna actually contains Duke and Virginia and I don't know how many Chinese students and I don't know how many planetary elements? What does it mean to be global and local and global and situated, and to be smart and profoundly, deeply embedded in the glorious provinciality of Emilia-Romagna at the same time? What does it mean that the gross national product of Emilia-Romagna is bigger than the entire south of Italy put together? How do we weave the civic fabric into the discussion about critical consciousness and critical responsibility? And how do we do that at this particular point in Europe, another major location, this particular political project at this particular point in time, when it looks like at the age of 60, Europe has finally reached adolescence and has relinquished the bond to the Anglo-American parents, and we're on our own now, it appears. Well, what does that mean? The beginning of anti-Oedipal, de-Oedipalized growing pain, maybe the beginning of maturity. What does that do to the critical sense of becoming discerning citizens of a global civic space in our millennium? It seems to me that this connection, civic responsibility, global, local, Europe, and alone, finally, whatever that means, at this particular point of time, redefines what we are used to calling the critical function of the university. Let's be honest, at this particular point in our history, the discussion about what constitutes the critical core of a major university. I'm thinking of Bologna, that even lends its name to a very famous reform of our education system, sponsored by the European community, that really what defines the university is the quest for some core value, some core curriculum, particularly in the humanities. There is a real scramble to actually come to an agreement to what are the crucial texts that really define something that we would call the European, the Western, the university. And any moment you start the discussion about canon, the royal armies of the triumphant West come galloping in, and the civilizational mission of a white university bringing European wisdom to the world starts unfurling and unfolding its poisonous message. Complicated times and claims to a global canon, reenactment of nationalistic claim, and last but not least, the pressures of economic globalization, the neoliberal pressure of knowledge transfer, whatever that means, and the pursuit of excellence in relation to a constructed vision of what is social responsibility. But is that social responsibility embedded in a sense of the civic, in a sense of responsibility for a territory, for a city, for a history, for a moment of belonging? I doubt it very much. Never has the curriculum been as depoliticized as since we started the discussion on social relevance and the social responsibility of the university. It's almost a directly proportional relation. The more we emphasize social relevance, the more depoliticized our curriculum becomes. What does that say about the critical function of the university? So much that we can learn from extracting the situated, localized nature of our knowledge and respecting the complexities of our historical, territorial locations, learning from the past, knowing, as every critical thinker in Europe must know, that our past is far more too important to be merely replicated or monumentalized. We need to tear it apart critically, reconstruct it critically, creatively, critically, generatively, knowing that if we cannot hope for a better past, we can surely join forces to make something that would be maybe, perhaps, hopefully, a sustainable future. Thank you very much.